Okay, the April 18th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Education is called to order. I apologize for that we're running a little late this morning. We had a lot of business to take care of. This afternoon. When are we? What time of day is it? So everyone please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and live streamed on the internet. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. All those, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? All those in favor? Okay. Item 2.04 is establish agenda order, and the agenda stands as written. And item 2.05 is recognitions, and we have some recognitions this evening. Who's
Good evening. I am Buffy Jordan, coordinator of Secondary Reading, English, and Integrated Literacy, and I have the pleasure of introducing this evening's board recognition. But before I begin, I would like to ask the members of the board and Dr. Arlotto to please come forward. Members of the board and Dr. Arlotto, we had hoped to do this recognition last month, but Mother Nature had other plans. Nevertheless, I am pleased to be here tonight to talk about three outstanding young people who happen to also be the top three finishers in this year's 30th Annual Anne Arundel County Spelling Bee. The Spelling Bee is a partnership of Anne Arundel County Public Schools and the 21st Century Foundation, and this year's presenting sponsor was Development Facilitators Incorporated. I had the opportunity to be in attendance in February to watch this incredibly exciting competition between 25 of our best spellers. They battled through 24 rounds, spelling words that many of us have never heard and much less ever used in conversation. When all was said and done, Wiley H. Bates Middle School 8th grader Isabel Messina was the winner, correctly spelling the word Fomorian to capture the title. I have it in front of me. I can see it. They couldn't. Reagan Jakiran of Monsignor Slade Catholic School finished second, and Eli Fortier of Indian Creek School was third. These three and their fellow competitors showed poise and confidence, not to mention an amazing command of the English language. It was truly inspiring to watch. All of the spellers received a medallion and a prize bag that contained assorted gift items and a commemorative poster. The top three finishers each received trophies and additional prizes. Isabel will represent our school system at the Scripps National Spelling Bee later this year. She also won an online subscription to Webster's Third International Dictionary and the Samuel Lewis Sugarman Award Certificate and Savings Bond donated by Jay Sugarman in honor of his father, who's a lifelong advocate of education. The nature of the spelling bees, of course, is that there can only be one winner. However, we know that every student who participated in this year's bee is a winner and a champion. As they come forward, please join me in congratulating Isabel, Reagan, and Eli for their incredible accomplishments.
Lieutenant. Awesome. Congratulations.
Item 2.06 is school and community highlights, and I wanted to start that off myself tonight with, I think we are all aware of the issues that have come to light at Chesapeake High School and in the Pasadena community recently. I know everyone on this board, Dr. Arlotto, and our entire staff takes these matters very seriously. Just there, in case there is any doubt, I want to make it clear hate, bigotry, and discrimination in any form has absolutely no place in our county, and certainly not in our school system. I believe Dr. Arlotto and his team are putting a great deal of hard work in a variety of ways to address those issues as they occur, but also putting in the work every day in every school to foster a climate of, as Dr. Arlotto wrote in his column this week in the Capitol, acceptance and inclusion. To that end, I'd like to ask that this board hear a presentation of these initiatives throughout the school system at the next meeting on May 2nd. I'd also like to make clear that I certainly believe, and I think this board does as well, that our school system plays a role in addressing these issues of hate, bigotry, and discrimination. We aren't perfect, and we want to get better, not just in this area, but in every area. When it comes to changing attitudes and behaviors, however, we need our community's help. It's time for us to stop pointing fingers and start working together. That is the only way we will overcome this, not just at Chesapeake, but throughout our county, our state, and our nation as a whole. That said, I want to finish on a positive note. The slides that were up behind me are coming back, I think. The Anne Arundel Parent Coalition did recently with its recent Chalk Walk and the hashtag Chesapeake United initiatives was inspiring and invigorating. The pictures you see here capture the real Chesapeake. These events involve not just parents, but all of our schools in the Chesapeake cluster and students of all ages. We must seize the momentum created by what you see here. There's a role for all of us to play, and I believe we will all find ways to do just that. Dr. Arlotto.
Thank you. We are certainly, and I think these pictures are wonderful, and they depict the real positive spirit that is really risen up, as you see, as we ask our Cougars to rise up in that picture. It really has been heartening to see the Chesapeake community come together. The coalition, along with Chesapeake United, has really done a phenomenal job in starting to bring the communities together, and we're appreciative of that. I think it's a great idea to do a presentation. We'll be delighted to do that for the board on May 2nd. Elevating all students, eliminating all gaps through access and equity has been absolutely the cornerstone and the underpinning of everything we have been doing and thinking about in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. We welcome the opportunity to highlight the good work of the Office of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement, along with what's happening in all of our schools and across all of our departments to support access and equity. We've been focusing, as many of you know, to our board in areas of equitable practices, understanding and identifying implicit bias, restorative practices and cross-cultural understanding and acceptance through professional development, student conversations, our District 203 and Be Nice initiatives, just to name a few. However, there is no question that challenges, serious challenges, remain. With the recent events around our country, our county, and within our schools, I want to be really honest. I'm both sad and angry. We are currently living in a culture where hate-filled rhetoric is on the rise, and common decency is no longer common. This is unacceptable, and it must stop. There is no place for this thought, behavior, speech, or action in 2018, and certainly not in this community. Collectively, I absolutely believe we are better than this. We as a school system know the important role we play in growth and development of our students, and we realize we can and should do more. So with that, we welcome the opportunity to share what we are doing and what the challenges are. We'll continue to work with our partners throughout the county to bring this about. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Korbelak.
Last week. It was hosted by Derek Matthews with the County Executive's Office from Anne Arundel United. And just to piggyback on what you were saying, there was a panel, a group of 4 people in the panel, but I particularly appreciated some words from Pastor Offer, who reminded all of us in the room that this is a community effort, even though a lot of the focus right now has been on the school system to fix racism in this county, because we do have the children for 6 or so hours a day. But he reminded everybody in the room that it is a part of the community's job to do this. And, you know, a couple of years ago, I had the chance to speak at the MLK breakfast, and I shared with everybody then, and I still believe it now. Our children are watching us. Who are we inviting to the dinner table? Who are we inviting to our places of worship? What are we doing? Us. And I hope that we can work together as a community to be a role model for our kids, because we can't fix it between 7 and 3.
Ms. Sasso.
I want to speak in reference to Maryland Hall, which is a place that the building is owned by AACPS, but at the same time, that is a place where our children go. Children of all races, of all colors, and they basically are involved in art. And art basically brings the community together. So that's one of the thoughts and that we should look at, is placing our children in art and in environments where they are working and sharing together, because it will really make a difference also in the sports. Thank you.
Ms. Korbelak.
Well, to piggyback on that, it is spring musical time at our high schools, and I had the chance to go see Anything Goes at Annapolis High School on Friday, and they're doing a different spinoff on that this weekend called The Drowsy Chaperone. But the talent always blows my mind, and the lead, who is in Anything Goes, if you want to hear a Broadway voice down the street from us, you need to go to the show this weekend.
And since we're talking about art, I'm going to share another watch on the screen, because this is so amazing that I had to make sure everybody could see it. You will see pictures of the amazing new mural on the English Hall at Glen Burnie High School. This is the Mural Club spent 5 months designing and painting this 90-foot-long celebration of authors. As an English major and an avid reader, I will say I would love to have this in my home, and I hope they will make posters of it. Some of my favorites included Maya Angelou and Shakespeare and my fellow University of Virginia attendee Edgar Allan Poe. A special shout out to art teacher Ryan McCready and student Harry F. Felt, and Harry completed over 50% of the mural by himself. This is the 3rd mural the Mural Club has created at Glen Burnie, and I can't wait to see what they're going to design for the Science Hall next. But it really is amazing, and if you're out that way, you should stop by and say, can I come see the mural, because it is awe-inspiring. It is awesome. It's very cool. Ms. Sasso.
Talking about art so that you know what our children are doing. At Maryland Hall, there is a wall that basically the children from Bates, so if you go to Maryland Hall and it's the exterior wall, they have basically completed the whole wall. It's the exterior wall. So this week it's going to be finished and it will be put outside so that the children that are at Bates Middle School, when they go to school, the whole wall, they have done it.
Great things happening. So, all right. Item 2.07 is the Krask report.
Good evening, President Hummer, members of the board, and Dr. Arlato. My name is Connor Curran, and I'm the Secretary of Education of CRASC. Tomorrow, CRASC will elect the student member of the Board of Education for the 2018-19 school year. As I previously mentioned, the finalists are Coleman Campbell, Emily Kissinger, and Josie Araya. Per the CRASC Constitution, schools are permitted to send a delegation of voters based on their enrollment. Once the votes have been tallied, look for a news release from the AACPS Communications Office announcing our winning candidate. We are excited and proud to be electing the 45th student member of the Board of Education for Anne Arundel County. The student member is appointed by the governor and serves a one-year term during his or her senior year of high school and receives an $8,000 college scholarship. Anne Arundel's student member is the only one in the nation on a local Board of Education with full voting rights. I continue to be honored to have the opportunity to represent students of Anne Arundel County. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. We will now move into the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. A tone will sound when time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Audience members must refrain from use of profanity, verbal outburst, or any other actions that disrupt the meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer session with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking, and handouts should be given to the board assistant. The first will be Josie Araya, Robert Silkworth, and Tony Pratt.
Stand there. Okay, just making sure. Good evening, President Hummer, Dr. Lotto, and fellow board members. My name is Josie Ray, and many of you know me as the president of CRASC, but I am here today as a student who has observed the recent and ongoing racially motivated behaviors in our community. As I prepared my remarks, I realized that the majority of what I'm about to say is crucial. So I want to preface my statement by saying that I love AACPS and all the work that you do, really. I devoted countless hours to student activism in this school system and value the quality of my education. But it's time to be honest about some things. We all understand that systematic racism is not a school issue, it's a community one, which is why I truly believe that it falls within the responsibility of the school system to take on addressing this in order to provide effective cultural proficiency training and diversity appreciation. As a student who will be going through 12 years of education, I will spend 14,040 hours in a classroom. We are tested on math, reading, sciences, and all the AP areas, but there is no direct assessment of our cultural understanding. We should ask ourselves, if these areas were included as part of the PARCC testing, would the system focus more on attention and resources towards the quality of this curriculum? Because as global citizens, which I believe our school system needs to prepare us to be, we will be facing diversity of all kinds every day. Mentioned this week in the media was a plan to increase the number of anti-bias advisory lessons for this new school year. I need to remind you all that students for many years have been saying that advisory lessons are not effective, especially with such an important topic such as biased and racially motivated behaviors. Administrative programs such as Room 203, the Be Nice campaign, and posters on school walls do not reach students. They are attempts, but posters, hashtags, logos, and lessons are as effective as tweeting your thoughts and prayers. Honestly, they are an expression of a wish when what we need is an achievement of a goal. It is not enough to just be nice. It's time that we as a county be brave. I think it's time to take a serious look at the effectiveness of these efforts and have a new educational approach that involves the school and the community with bonding actions that are eye-opening, similar to the Not My Child campaign. Large, focused, emotional, and real. These impacts of these presentations force students to look differently at themselves and their conduct. Speaking of conduct, we need to look at the consequences of these behaviors in our schools. Currently, first offenses range from 5 different levels of behavioral intervention, and despite creating a threatening, hostile environment for others in the classroom and degrading another student's ethnic background, let's face it, in 2018, racism is wrong and certainly not allowed in our schools. So let's start making that clear in our disciplinary actions. We need to take a serious look at our priorities as a school system and put our money, time, policy, and human capital behind creating a community-wide youth-led shift towards inclusivity, understanding, and celebration of our diversity. Because I really want to see next year's Capitol editorial be written about how proud we are as a school system to overcome these obstacles and grow as a community. So I say, let's give it a try and listen to what actually works. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Josie. Mr. Silkworth?
Good evening, President Hummer, Vice President Gill, and Dr. Alata, and distinguished Board of Ed members. My name is Robert Silkworth. I'm here again this evening representing the TAC High School Concerns Committee. On April, our meeting was held on the 11th. We did have some discussions and concerns and recommendations about our half-day PD experience, which recently occurred on the 17th of April, as well as some recommendations about some issues with field trips. We will be sharing our concerns and recommendations at the ASI TAC Advisory Group, which will be held tomorrow. We did also meet with the ASI group March 15th, and we had some productive discussions about quarterly grades, as well as the giving of the ACT test to juniors, which we felt to be a very wise decision, and of course next year's strategic plan. As always, we will continue to collaborate with ASI TAC. The concern I felt worthy of presenting to you this evening is about the recent student walkout. We felt that it was very well handled by all schools throughout the county. Each school had the opportunity to make decisions for themselves about the best way to show support for our students. Our young people, today's generation, they do care, ladies and gentlemen, about what is happening in this world. And their voices are important and must be heard, and I do believe that they were heard loud and clear. Our concern, however, as teachers was that we felt we needed some more direction about where we should go from here at this point. Voila, Dr. Arlada, great job, because you did answer our questions in the letter that you recently prepared and was distributed to all families and students about the expectation. The expectation of the school system was made very clear. We thank you for that. We will continue to support our students as they look to express their concerns in appropriate ways, and we might recommend to help find a way for our students to strategize so that they can continue to voice their concerns in a positive and productive manner in keeping with our expectations. As you know, I usually end, ladies and gentlemen, with kudos. Tonight, I think it would be appropriate to thank all of our students, teachers, and staff who worked so diligently to express safety concerns, which were heard by the legislature as they did pass legislation designed to enhance school safety here in Anne Arundel County and across the state of Maryland. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a commercial. We'd like to invite everyone here, ladies and gentlemen, to come to North County High School. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, April 19th, 20th, and 21st, our drama department is putting on the musical Tarzan, and the performance begins at 7 o'clock each day. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to Ms. Bittman, Ms. Rago, and Erica Holsey. A great job. Our students are ready to provide a great show that I know you will all enjoy. And finally, I would also like to extend some congratulations to the 3 student candidates who are vying for the Board of Ed position. Best of luck to all of them. Thank you so much.
Mr. Gilliland.
Mr. Silkworth, can we hear your Tarzan impersonation?
You know what, Mr. Gillen, I actually, in my classroom, I have a lot of buttons. The kids know me for buttons. You can press this button, press that button. I have a Tarzan button, and I have an applause button. And I had really thought about bringing those buttons so that as I did this, I would, but I decided not to do that. Maybe next time.
And we thank you for that.
You're quite
Mr.
welcome.
Silkworth, thank you.
And we thank you again, sir, for helping us.
Good evening, President Hummer, Dr. Alato, and the Board of Education staff. My name is Tony Pratt. I'm a community activist, and I'm here on behalf of our community. Ms. Korbalak alluded to the fact that the community needs to get involved. So I'm here as a community activist who's getting involved. And my situation is with Annapolis Middle School buses that are being terminated effective 2018 school year. I got involved because a parent came to me last year to let me know that the school buses were being taken away. It wasn't enough time. They weren't allotted enough time to find out that the school buses were being taken away. So we got the community together, and we came together. And we came together with Jolynn Davis, Alex Zernakovich, and Les Douglas, and we had a meeting. And it was determined that the buses would be reinstated until the 2018-2019 school year. But some safety things were going to be put in place, and things were going to be reviewed, and you were going to get back to the community. Well, it was a break in that procedure because we never got information back from that. It was from a source that I found out that the buses would be terminated again. The school breakdown with the Board of Education and those powers that be never came to us to let us know. So we in turn had another meeting. I reached out to Les Douglas. I reached out to Mr. Mosier to invite everybody to the meeting. They declined because they said that software was being introduced today and he couldn't speak on that. It's many safety concerns that we lined out back then. As far as a child being struck on a bicycle last year, 2 pedestrians being hit, traffic concerns, 17 breaks in the road on the way to the school, 5 businesses, prominent businesses, one being 7-Eleven. I had the opportunity to walk that route several times. I'm 50 years old. I feel like I can make good decisions. As I approached the Spa Road and Forest Drive, I almost was hit myself. I'm alert. You'll have more than 150 kids on that road at any given time, starting at 11 years old. It is known that you don't use your full brain until you're 25, and the decision-making part comes last. So as they're walking and horse playing, we don't want a casualty before we see what's right in our faces. We have road signs, red signs on West Street because it's dangerous to cross the street for adults to pick up and walk across a crosswalk. But we're asking kids as young as 11 years old to walk on Forest Drive that just at the route that they're going to be walking on had a 5-car accident last week that I witnessed. The week before that, at Cherry Grove and Forest, the same 5-car accident was also a car that ran a red light and hit somebody. I would like the policy to be looked at before somebody gets really hurt, and then we have a liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pratt. Dr. Arlotto.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for helping with my microphone. Thank you for being here and organizing the folks to be here this evening. Certainly your voice has been heard loud and clear. You've not heard anything from us because we're still working with the city. I think you have met with the mayor, if I'm not mistaken. I've met with the mayor now twice. He was here in my office, and he and I had a conversation on Monday of this week. We've agreed to get back together to continue to talk about what we can do to address some of the safety concerns. So I'm still working with the city. So as of right now, and I've had meetings with the president of the board, the stay remains in place in terms of the bus continues, and will stay in place until the board is satisfied that I've been able to bring something back to them in my work with the city. It's not something that the school system can take care of alone in terms of safety concerns, road signs, traffic patterns. Those kinds of things are beyond our control. But the mayor's agreed to continue to talk with me, and he and I are setting up what will be our 3rd meeting. So I just want you to have that information.
All right. It's one thing I want to leave you with. I would like to invite each and every one of you to take that walk with me at the time they go to school and the time they come from school, and you draw your own conclusion.
Absolutely. Have you left your... Ms. Pratt, is your contact information on the card that you drew up? Perfect. The mayor and I talked on Monday about walking that route, so we'll get in touch with you.
All right, next, Jaden Hill, Jonathan Hill, Tony Spencer, Vivian Spencer, and Lisa Rodvian.
When Tony Spencer started, can you introduce him? Because I don't know him. Can you recognize him? Okay. Did you serve with him? No, that's before you. Okay.
Hey, how are you?
I think, yeah, good night, good afternoon, whatever. Mr. Spencer start.
You got me start?
Yes, sir.
I think that was a sign that says age before beauty. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Anthony J. Spencer. Most people know me by Tony, and I appreciate that. My comments are on a different aspect of the safety and security. It wasn't mentioned, security wasn't mentioned. 2010, I was the public information officer for the Annapolis Fire Department. From 1974 to 1997, I was a firefighter paramedic. My first 13 years as a paramedic, I saw everything. We dealt in risk management. The last 10 years, I was in the fire marshal's office as an arson investigator, public information person, and whatever else they found for me to do. And in the last 10 years, I had the opportunity to be proactive and not allow things that had happened by being a person who understood the codes and helped enforce the codes. But I've seen every type of murder, suicide, rape, incest, things that we think happen someplace else. It happens everywhere we are. In 2010, I had the opportunity to serve on the Security Advisory Board for Homeland Security in Washington, D.C. Because of my fire service background, Homeland Security wanted those people who had the greatest access on the most times to talk to them, where the fire service and paramedics were those at the top of the list. Because we went into restaurants, businesses, homes, and we saw any and everything. I'm pleading to you tonight for the security standpoint of what happens to these children if they're allowed. Ms. Pratt said that there were 150 students. Now I want to take this a very brief scenario. Your daughter, not just your daughters, but your sons as well. This is not, we talked about the students, and we always think about females being abducted. It's not just females. It's not just teenagers. But the people, when you have them in large groups, when no one's going to notice just one child, and someone's professional enough to say, hey, how you doing this morning? Like that dress the next day. Boy, I like that book bag. Where did you get it? And they form a relationship 20 feet away until the student comes closer and would talk to the person because they now think they have an opportunity to be friends with someone, and they get snatched. So I want you to think about the security side, not just the safety side. They're two different things. They have two different results. And I want to leave you with this small saying. We live in a time when evil and opportunity presents itself to add to our collective challenge of running the school system. That's all I really have to say, and I want to thank you for the opportunity.
And Mr. Spencer, my understanding is that you once served up here.
Yes, I did. I
Yes,
sat
so-
there, and there.
And there. So
Yes, I did.
we want to thank you and welcome back.
Well, thank you for your service. Listen, I understand your decisions are not easy, but the young lady said it. We have to work together, and you can't just put it on the school system. We need the homes very much involved. And where we don't have students that have parents, the community is still responsible for that student. So I want to thank you for what you're doing. Any way I can possibly help you, I'm available. I'm retired now. God bless you.
So.
All right, I guess I'll go next.
Yes, you will.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto, President Hummer, Vice President Gilliland, and members of the board. My name is Lisa Rodvian, and I am a secondary teacher in AACPS, and I am a resident of the city of Annapolis. I am here tonight to respectfully request that you reject any proposal to end bus service for Annapolis Middle School students who live in communities along Forest Drive, including Newtown 20, Annapolis Walk, Greenbrier, and Woodside Gardens. While your stated policy ensures that walking paths are checked for safety, I cannot imagine how the sidewalks along Forest Drive could be considered a safe path. With high-speed traffic in both directions, there is little margin of error for both the drivers and the students themselves. Working with middle schoolers on a daily basis, I can't begin to count the number of times I've watched young people trip and fall over their own feet because their own feet are an inch longer than they were the day before due to their rapidly growing bodies. One tiny misstep along their path could become deadly. Furthermore, we can't just discuss safety for ideal weather conditions. We must ensure safety for the worst weather conditions. Any type of inclement weather makes the margin of error for driver and student even smaller. In the winter, when snow is shoveled off the road and onto the sidewalks, those sidewalks can remain impassable for weeks before melting. At that point, there is simply no place for students to walk except the roadway itself, which may be icy and where the speed limit is 40 miles per hour. I ask, how many of you would opt to walk to work on the roadway on an icy road every morning? Besides the obvious dangers of young people walking along a very busy, high-speed roadway, there is perhaps another even more likely danger. Students left with no safe path to school and no ride will simply not attend school. AACPS has adopted the motto, elevating all students, eliminating all gaps. When many of the students who will be impacted by the loss of this bus route are already face significant obstacles in their education, I do not understand how AACPS can in good conscience consider removing bus transportation for this group of students. On behalf of my fellow Annapolitans in the neighborhoods along Forest Drive, I respectfully request that you continue to offer the existing bus service for these Annapolis Middle School students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rodvian.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Jaden Hill. I'm concerned about the bus situation. I think that when the kids have to walk and they get to school, and the teachers say we're ready to do work, they'll already be tired and they wouldn't really feel like doing any work. And yeah, I think that they won't be able to do any work because they're already worn out by asthma and any type of sickness they have. And also with the safety problem, that when my brother 2 weeks ago, he got hit by another car on Forest Drive, and his car was really messed up, so I didn't think that was safe for the kids to walk there if they have to go through that. If it did that to a car, it would probably kill one of the children, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. Good job.
How you doing, Board? My name is Jonathan Hill. I'm the father of this young, handsome guy right here. My issues are also with the bus route. It has pretty much everything to do with safety, and I know you all have your clause about how long it is that you can actually walk to school, so I just came up with a couple of things that was definitely overlooked as a safety issue and adding more traffic on Forest Drive. So taking away the school buses in any neighborhood. When the school buses go into the neighborhood, they have the stop sign, and it holds up traffic from funneling out onto Forest Drive. Taking away those school buses will actually let traffic freely come out on Forest Drive, and the parents having to take their children to school, it would literally add traffic to Forest Drive. I'm a truck driver by trade. I'm an author. Jaden is also an author, and I talk to a lot of kids about truck driving, about writing books and things of that sort. I'm a community activist also. One of the things as a truck driver I know is right past American Legion on Forest Drive, there is that part of the road is smaller than all of the rest of Forest Drive, and I've literally seen trucks jump that curve because a truck and a car has a hard time coming together on that road. So it's going to be crazy to think that, you're not going to have 150 kids horse playing on any part of the road. And imagine, a truck jumping that curve. And if you don't believe me, you can walk it, and you can see that part of the curve is black from tire prints. So that's something that's going to be kind of crazy. Then you have distracted drivers. Nobody drives without a cell phone in their hand. Even though that's the rule, everybody drives with a cell phone in their hand. Whether they looking to get a text or change their music on their phone, it's just not it's not good. On Forest Drive also, in the past 5 years, there's been 2 individuals that were decapitated by cars on Forest Drive. They literally had to find one guy. They had to find his head. They was looking for his head for 2 hours. So, and this is a grown man whose body is put together. These children, they're not even finished growing yet. So it's going to, can you imagine a parent trying to go down there and say, hey, let me see my child? They're not going to, when they do see it, they're never going to forget that. Also, there's over 60 registered sex offenders, and when something like this gets out, they're predators already, so they're going to actually go towards what they know that they can, the predation on the kids, and that's not going to be beneficial for anybody. Then you have a methadone clinic right on the path, right on their path, and these are individuals who are on drugs trying to get off drugs, which I really never got. And then you have children who shows up late who have to walk by themselves. Also, right there, just before you get to the methadone clinic, last year there was a young man found dead in those woods. Here's the funny part about that. When you have a person that says, it's okay to dump a body right here, it's because they don't believe that anybody's going to see them. So imagine you'll have time to hide right there, snatch a kid right there, do anything you want to do right there. So my whole issue is with the safety, and we really, really can't be that kind of inhuman to take buses away from children in such an unsafe element and environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Mr. Grannon.
Thank you. I just have a quick question for Dr. Arlotto. What is the distance between this bus stop that's under consideration and the school?
I think it's just a mile. Is it? 1.3, Mr. Spencer says. 1.3.
And the policy is if it's 1.5 or less.
Secondary students, 1.5. Less than 1.5.
As a presumption, but that could be rebutted.
Meaning?
Meaning that the school system could determine that it's 1.49, but they should still get a bus stop.
The school system has the ability to do that, yes. It's within the purview of the policy.
Excuse me. I also was asking to revisit the policy for that issue. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Spencer.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Arlotto, President Hummer, and members of the board. I'm Dr. Vivian Guest Spencer, a retired educator who spent the last 45 years of my life in the classroom with young students. This evening, I'm here on behalf of Alderman Sheila Finlayson, also a former educator. Unfortunately, she's able to attend this evening's meeting due to minor surgery she had to undergo today. So she was unable to complete the remarks she wished to present. However, she asked me to assure you, the board, that she is in complete agreement with the members of the Woodside, Greenbrier, Annapolis Walk, and Newtown communities who are expressing the absolute necessity of bus transportation for the children within these communities who will be perilously thrown in harm's way without bus service to Annapolis Middle School beginning in September. Alderwoman Finlayson will send her specific remarks directly to the board by email as soon as she is able. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Roderick Clavery, I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking there, Yasmin Jamison, William Pratt, Tiana Height. Whoever wants to start, go right ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I say good evening to Madam President and Superintendent. My name is Roderick Clavery. I'm new to the community. My concern is I have three younger sons that, well, two of them will be going to the middle school next year. I have one that's going in now, so this bus problem will affect him if it's taken away. But then next year I'll have two going, so now I'll have two boys that'll have to take that walk. And like has been said before, the traffic, even though it's posted 40 miles an hour, you know nobody is driving 40 miles an hour. Okay, so, and again, children tend to play around. This, as a matter of fact, this is the last storm we had, and I'm watching my son the oldest one that has to go out, walk to the bus stop, and I'm watching him walking, and there was a patch of ice, and he was playing on it. He didn't know I was watching him, and he was playing on it, and he slipped. Okay, you know, kids do that. You know, they get on the ice and they want to slide, and he slipped. So the problem with, you know, Forest Drive in that area where when the snow is knocked off the street up onto the curb, there is no sidewalk. You know, and then the street is icy, so they're apt to play, and you know it could be a whole lot of problems. My understanding is that the buses still come down Forest Drive. You know, my issue is how much of an inconvenience would it be for them to just continue what they're doing and going into these neighborhoods and picking the children up and coming back out. As was said before, whenever those buses come in, the signs flip out, traffic stops. You know, the kids get on the bus, they wait till everybody's seated, and then when those signs go in, then traffic continues. And that right there in itself is a safe way to get our kids back and forth to school. You know, so I'm here, you know, as what was said, you know, by the superintendent about being sad and angry about, you know, the cultural situation that we have in this country right now. But, you know, how much more decent would it be to just continue with the bus service the way it is? Because to my understanding, it's not really cutting into any budget. You know, it's not costing any more money to do it. So, you know, it's just, you know, and just to be real, it seems like a lot of issues. The fact that parents have to come out here and express anger about their children going to school when the things they should be concerned about is them coming home, doing their homework, getting prepared for the next day. And, you know, you don't have to worry about, okay, remember when you walk into school, don't play on the sidewalk. You know, that kind of thing. That's something we don't need to be dealing with our children. You know, that's an added headache we don't need. So thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is William Pratt. I'm here with a high level of concern also for the safety for our kids. As Roderick Clavery was saying about the prices and the cost, you know, I'd like to ask you, what would be the cost of your child? What would be the cost of your child if you was to think of your child? What would be the cost of your child when we sit and we put policies in place before we actually evaluate and look at the circumstances, the safety situations that's already been talked about, that's at hand? I think as a board, I think we could come together a little bit more and really research the development and be a little more proactive than reactive. I think in our society these days, I think we have become really good at being reactive when we wait for tragedies to happen and then everybody have all the answers. I think if we, I say like George Alato said, I'm a bit angry about it because I think when we make policies and we make decisions based on other people's lives, we don't think of the lives based on if this was my child. If this was my child, what would the decision be? Thank you very much for your time.
Ms. Corbalak.
Mr. Pratt, I agree with you about the proactive. I regularly commute Forest Drive. I know exactly what you're talking about. That sidewalk and kids hustling around and somebody gets nudged into the street. My understanding is that there's some pathways kind of behind communities along that section of Annapolis. Maybe maybe it's still dirt, maybe it's, you know, riding your bike, playing with your friends. I would love to see all of us work together to advocate for a more walkable, bikeable, safe Annapolis, so that whether it's going to school or just us commuting or, you know, going to the store, that there's places that we can walk and bike that are away from cars so that we're not endangering pedestrians and bikes.
Thank you. I totally agree with your comment, but even in the level of taking kids through a path through woods, we've already raised the level of concern. We have a methadone clinic. We have kids being abducted, people being murdered, bodies being dropped. Again, what would your decision be if it was your child?
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Ms. Height? Tiana?
Good evening. My name is Tiana Height, and I live down Woodside Gardens, and I feel as though I'm the only parent from down there because they don't believe or trust y'all that y'all really have y'all best interests in the parents or the children down there in the community, because like how y'all took away, how y'all rechanged the school district without anybody really knowing about it, so they really don't think y'all gonna really consider us, our children, their safety. And every parents don't have cars to take their children to school every morning. Everybody don't have support system where they know somebody will watch their children while they're at work. So therefore, I feel as though y'all being inconsiderate as me as a parent, because I don't really have a support system. But I feel as though y'all need to take consideration and just leave the bus the way that it is. It works with everybody's work schedule if they go to work or go to school, whatever, and it's being more beneficial to everybody. And the kids will be safe, and my children will be safe too, as also.
Thank you, Ms. Height.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Jameson, and I don't anymore have kids in the public schools right now, so, I'm just here as a concerned citizen. I didn't think that I would have to be here again, because we were here in November, and you heard all this stuff, right? So to come back and say all the things that all these parents have been saying since November, like we're saying the same things. So I'm not sure what it is that they can say that's going to change your position. So I'm hoping, we're going to reinstate the school buses like we did in November, but I want it to be hopefully going forward, not just 2018-19 year, but just going forward. Also, I think you guys got a software system, right? And I'm not sure how much that costs, but I'm sure our tax dollars paid for it. So we should have some kind of say-so in, what happens with that. And also, I'm sorry, I'm just going all over the place, but also, instead of just the software system is not a human, right? So they're just like looking at however the satellite thing is, measuring the mileage, but it's not really looking at the human part. So like Tony was saying, if you guys go out and do the walk with them, you'll actually get the human aspect. You can see what's going on and what these young people are going to be faced with. What else? So, I just can't understand how we're still here with this. And I don't know. Well, oh, one more thing. Is there like a safety clause in this policy? Is there any kind of a safety clause put in for the policy that you're using, with the 1.5 miles? Is there any kind of
safety clause in terms of?
Maybe you need to do that. Like, we need to readdress the policy probably, right? Because, you're saying 1.5 miles or a mile and whatever it is that the secondary students have to walk, but we have to also look at, is it safe for them? So is there a clause for anything like that?
Yes.
There is? Where would
Absolutely.
I find that?
It's in the policy.
Okay, so.
And the regulatory language. And let me also, since you stated that there should be a human element, our transportation division, there is a human element. Right?
So they
just
walk
so that you know that we just don't schedule a route and drop a bus stop at a corner. After the software package, after the software tells us where to put a bus stop, a human goes and checks to make sure that's an appropriate and safe place for a bus stop and a route.
And when was that done?
I'm sorry?
When was that done?
It's done. It's been done that way for years and years. Our team goes out and checks routes Every year, all and throughout the year.
Well,
I just wanted you to
when
know
made
that
this
is
decision,
there is a
though.
human element to
But when
the
you
bus
made
routing
this
piece.
decision,
It's kind of
you
well.
went
I
and
just want to
walked.
say that it's not a question and answer time.
Right.
But as we said at the beginning, there's no final decision has been made about this route. We're taking all the input and it will come up. But there is not currently this bus is still in place and it has not been removed, and it will be. All these factors will be considered when we're making decisions moving forward.
Well, okay, and then you'll let us know.
Your time is up. So thank you, though. Miss Erin Snell, Anna Drury, Ladrell Stevens, and Suzanne Martin.
Good evening, President, Superintendent, and Board of Education. Thanks for having me tonight. My name is Erin Snell. I'm a parent of 3 youngsters in the school system, although my kids are not attending the middle school yet. I'm also the Citizens Advisory Committee representative for the Annapolis Cluster Elementaries, and I'm not here in an official capacity for that tonight, but in that role I do hear the concerns of the citizens in my cluster, and I have heard a lot of concern about the bus route. And I haven't heard anything positive. I've only heard people that are very concerned. I wanted to start off by saying, though, that in the recent release, I heard that we received an award, that our school system received an award for closing the achievement gap with 9th graders. And I was really excited because that shows a level of innovation and leadership that is putting us on a right path. And when I see that, it tells me that the leadership capacity and the innovation capacity is there to find some creative solutions. And with this busing issue, we're trying to promote access and equity and putting more barriers for students, especially students who are likely to come from homes that are stressed financially. If we're coming from public housing and subsidized housing, there's a higher likelihood of some financial stress. So I'm not sure why it makes sense, if we're trying to close the achievement gap, why we would add additional challenges to a family in terms of transportation and increased likelihood of student absenteeism. We don't want to create any more additional barriers. And one thing that I never would have thought of, but talking to some high school students, I didn't know that there's a lot of conflict between different public housing communities in our area. And the high school students expressed to me that they would not go on that route if it were them, because they have beef with other neighborhoods and they were concerned about having their backs exposed on a busy road. So that's something I never would have crossed my mind, but Forest is so out in the open there, and we're coming from kids who might have more stresses, and so we should be removing barriers, not adding barriers. So I ask you, I don't think fixing the path is the answer. I think the policy needs to change to meet the needs of our students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Snell.
Hi, my name is Anna Drury, and I have a 13-year-old son who attends Annapolis Middle School. I happen to live in Newtown 20 neighborhood and have for nearly 10 years. The route that you have proposed that these children walk is, as you know, and as everyone has said, is extremely dangerous. It's within a foot to 2 of the actual cars going by at 50 miles per hour. I don't want my child there. As a matter of fact, during the bad weather that we had, I began to take my son to school each morning because I didn't want him to be in the cold and everything like that. I'm like that, but I tracked the miles. It's actually from my front door to the school, the exact path is 1.6 miles. Now I know that's, point this and point that. It's split in hairs, but it's at the very maximum of what you guys allow secondary students to walk. Not to mention, they have to go through 2 public housing neighborhoods, which I know because I live there, riddled with crime, drugs at every turn. And who's to say on that route every morning, they're going to pick up something that they shouldn't pick up. I don't even let my child go outside. I don't, and it's sad. Rarely does he go outside. And he knows the rules, and I can't see sending him out there every day, not only to go through 2 crime-ridden drug-infested neighborhoods onto a very busy street within this close to the edge of cars 50 miles an hour, going by a 7-Eleven that's very busy at rush hour, obviously, more traffic in and out with 2 ways to get in and out of that parking lot, by a methadone clinic, all the way to school. Now down there's a lot of single parent, I know I am one, single parent families. We don't all have cars. I'm fortunate enough to have one, but I know many of my neighbors do not. If those children wake up late, or if it's a bad weather day, something like that, I'm not sending my child out there. I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. It's a shame that we even have to be here to address this kind of concern. I would think that anyone who walks that path, and I've done it, I've lived here, I even went to that school many, many years ago. We didn't have as much problems as we have at this time, but it's a shame that we even have to be here to address this issue when it's clear that it's a very dangerous road and not safe for anybody. Not safe for anyone, really, let alone 11-year-old children. And now they have the tablets and the phone and nobody's paying attention. Adults do it. They don't pay attention. I've seen so many people trip and fall and everything else and run into things. These are going to be kids in packs twice a day, 150 of them. That's not safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drury.
Good evening, Board. My name is Ladrell Stevens. I come to you as a community activist, a community mentor, and when I heard about this bus situation and those kids, it made me think about my son. My son went to private school all his life. He was driven to school, picked up from school every day by me and his mother. And I asked myself, would I be here if my son was going to be affected by this? Yes, I would. But my son graduated 2 years ago from Mount St. Joe. But I'm here tonight because I have family and I have friends that have children that are going to be affected by this. Now, I feel like I really don't have too much more to say because everybody back here pretty much done said everything, almost pretty much everything that I was going to say. But it's safety, safety, safety. I can't. And even when I told my son I was coming to the meeting tonight, he was like, yeah, you need to be there. He told me I need to be there. He said that it wasn't right that those kids would have to walk to school on that road. And again, I say again, I'm a truck driver, just like Jonathan. I'm a truck driver, and I see kids not just going to Annapolis Middle, any school. When I see them come off the bus, they're not paying attention to anything. You know, there's plenty of commercials on TV about, being distracted drivers, teenage drivers, and a teenager walking with their phone is even worse than a teenager driving with their phone. And on Forest Drive, I know for a fact that is just one of the most deadliest, streets to leave 150 vulnerable kids that could be left up to anything. I mean, like everybody's been saying, the kidnapping, trafficking, not to mention we have a big bullying problem that I don't think that was thought about when the policies and stuff were put in place. I just hope that y'all will be willing to work together with you. We'd be willing to work together with y'all to put something together, because I was sad and angered when I seen that this came about. But I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Is Suzanne Martin here? So that's everyone who signed up for about Annapolis Middle School. Thank you all so much for coming out and sharing, and I promise we've heard it all, and it will all be taken into consideration. Thank you all for coming. So next, Gina Davenport, Christy Batista, Shannon Schwallenberg, and Amaris Hill. Go ahead, Ms. Davenport.
Thank you. Good evening, President Hummer, Board, Dr. Arlotto. I'm Gina Davenport, the principal of Arundel High School, and I'm here with my colleagues, Scott Cooper, the World and Classical Language Chair at AACC, Margaret Scott, an assistant principal at the Phoenix Academy, and Kathy Flanders, a special educator at Glen Burnie High School. As you can tell, we have various backgrounds, but during a recent conversation, we found out that we had an important issue in common. We are concerned about college readiness for AACPS students. We're here today to propose a new policy to help encourage greater post-secondary success. Did you know that we have 658 of our current high school seniors that are taking less than 4 credits per semester? Not only does that mean that these students are not getting a full high school experience, but MSDE only provides a portion of the $5,231 per pupil revenue to our school system for each of them. Because students can earn 8 credits per year, most accumulate their graduation requirements very quickly. Many have earned 24 of their 26 credits before entering their senior year. This means that many students only need to take senior English and math to complete their high school requirements. Traditionally, seniors request a partial schedule, leaving our high schools without taking full advantage of a variety of courses that we offer to develop both academic skills and important 21st century work skills. Students are choosing to go home early instead of challenging themselves with courses in computer science, business, technology, and the arts. Some of these courses can provide opportunities to earn workforce industry certification and add value to students' resumes. They are also passing up opportunities to participate in the Early College Access Program or internships. Additionally, and perhaps more importantly, many students who request partial schedules have yet to earn the important college and career readiness distinction. Information obtained from our Office of Student Data indicates that our current seniors, the class of 2018, only 43% have obtained a satisfactory college and career ready score in math, 60% have earned CCR distinction in English, and 42 have earned test scores that indicate they're college and career ready in both English and math. This means that when these students enroll in college, they will be required to take developmental courses for high cost with no credit before they can take classes towards their degree. We are asking you to consider a policy that would establish criteria for students to receive partial schedules. This would not only provide consistency for all of our high schools, but also demonstrate the importance we place on that preparation. What we're really asking is that we set up a culture where instead of students wanting to think about how to get out of high school, they're concerned about what they can get out of high school, because we have so much to offer in our county.
Ms. Davenport, I agree with you 100%. And my kids have all been told you're taking a full load senior year. Don't even think about it.
So did the Davenport boys.
And I would like to propose to the board that we refer this to our policy committee to consider it moving forward, to Ms. Sasso, our policy committee chair, and Dr. Arlotto, your staff that serves on there. If there's no objection from the board, I recommend that we pass this on to the policy committee to address.
And if there's anything that I can do to help, I'll be happy to do that.
Oh, we'll find you.
Dr. Arlotto, you know where I live.
Yes, ma'am.
The Arundel High School.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto, President Hummer, and board members. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come before you this evening. As a collective group of school administrators participating in a county-supported PhD program through Notre Dame, we would like to share with you our thoughts regarding the AACPS grading policy and regulation. Last year, the school system revised this policy and regulation at all grade levels. However, the opportunity for mastery, commonly referred to as the redo policy, was not included for the elementary level. We are proposing that the board considers including an opportunity for mastery or redo in the elementary portion of the regulation. At the time of the revision, the committee working on this policy and regulation assumed that elementary school teachers provided students with the opportunity to redo assessments or assignments. Speaking from our experience working in elementary schools, we are finding this is not always the case. What one teacher considers working to mastery and being provided an opportunity to redo an assignment is not the same for another teacher. There is a lack of consistency amongst our elementary schools regarding the redo policy. Several schools are in the process of creating their own version of the redo policy to provide guidelines where there are currently none. We find that many parents are under the perception that the elementary schools follow the same grading procedures as the middle schools and high schools, and this is not the case.
Therefore, we are proposing that grading procedures at the elementary level align with those at the secondary level and reflect the following criteria. Students have one additional opportunity to improve their scores on no more than 5 assignments or assessments per marking period. Students must complete the new assignment at school and submit within 10 school days of receiving the returned original graded work. Students may choose which assessments and assignments they retake, except for district assessments. After an assignment or assessment has been redone, the higher grade shall be the grade of record. And lastly, teachers shall assign a minimum grade of 50% to assignments or assessments for which the student made a good faith effort. If a student does no work on an assignment or assessment, the teacher shall assign a grade of 0. We believe that these changes will provide consistency amongst elementary schools while also providing consistency for parents as students matriculate to middle and high school. Thank you for allowing us to share our perspective with you. Moving forward, we hope that you will consider our proposals to these changes in the grading policy and regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you all introduce yourselves for the board, please?
Sure. I'm Julia Walsh. I'm the principal at Tyler Heights Elementary.
I'm Christy Batiste. I'm the principal at Marley Elementary.
Ryan Bebo, Southgate Elementary.
Eugene Whiting, principal at MacArthur Middle School.
And I'm Sheree Brown. I work for Prince George's County Public Schools.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I say that I would like to refer this to the policy committee to take a look at if there's no objection from the board. Ms. Nally.
Mr. Bebo, do you remember me? I do. That's all I'll say. I don't think you
like father, like son.
So if there's no objection for the board, Ms. Sasso, I'm going to refer this to the policy committee, Dr. Arlotto, for your staff to add this to the agenda to look into. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
We would be delighted.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Schwellenberg. I'm here to talk to you about the bullying policy in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. The last thing any parent wants for their child is to return home upset from school, fearful, or injured. According to the Anne Arundel County 2017 MDS3 secondary survey, during the 2016-17 school year, 49% of students and 56% of staff members in Anne Arundel County schools felt harassment of students was a problem. At a recent Board of Ed meeting, students shared experiences involving multiple physical, mental, and property assaults they endured while attending Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Many parents complained about the lack of response from the school system after filing a bullying, harassment, or intimidation reporting form. Others complained that when the county did respond, they administered unacceptable solutions, such as forcing friendship between the victim and the bully. Most speakers shared that they felt the school system enforced little to no consequences to the offenders when bullying was witnessed or reported. It was truly heartbreaking to hear how experiences with bullying have caused some students to hate attending school or contemplate taking their own lives. While we believe the current bullying policy is appropriate for our schools, the regulation that determines the procedures staff should follow must be amended to ensure that all students feel safe in their learning environment. The current regulation reads that when a bullying form is filed, it must then be promptly and appropriately investigated by the school administrator or designee within 2 school days after receipt, or as soon as administratively possible. After reviewing administrative procedures from other local school systems, we discovered that when a report is filed, all parents of students involved must be notified on the same day that the report is received. We suggest the regulation be amended to require a response to the filer within 1 school day of receipt in order to acknowledge that the report has been received and the incident will be investigated. If the person who filed the bullying form is not notified when the investigation has started, it appears that there is no follow-up to the form being filed and no accountability to the person being bullied, even if this is occurring behind the scenes. This small action goes a long way to ease the mind of a worried parent and child. We also suggest removing the words "as soon as administratively possible" from Part C of the investigation section. This ambiguous wording does not create the degree of urgency the matter deserves. It also does not create enough accountability to ensure that all forms are followed up on in a timely manner. Another issue with the regulation is that there is no specific timeline for completing the investigation process. Neighboring counties have regulations which include strict timelines that require completed investigation forms to be completed by the principal within 14 days after the receipt of a complaint. We encourage Anne Arundel County to adopt similar regulation in order to ensure the investigations are completed within a reasonable time frame, demonstrating that student safety is a top priority. This will also ensure that any necessary consequences are enforced promptly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you all introduce yourselves, please?
My name is Shannon Schwallenberg, and I'm a special educator in Prince George's County.
And I'm Elizabeth Pape. I'm a special educator at Glen Burnie High School.
Go ahead.
Shannon Banks, Bowie State University.
And I'm Carla Barrow. I'm a teacher at North County High School.
Fantastic. Glad you all are here.
Okay.
Our bullying regulations are under review, which is separate from a policy review. That's something that we as administrative staff can do, and we've been re-reviewing our regulatory language on bullying.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So that's in process. Thank you, ladies, for coming and sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Ms. Hall.
Hello, my name is Amaris Hall, and last year I attended 8th grade at an Anne Arundel public school. I had first moved in the middle of my 8th grade year from Hawaii to this state. I am currently diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, autism, Asperger's, generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, and major depressive disorder. While coming here, I had a current 504 plan, but it took almost a month to get a meeting at that current school. And when I first had that 504 meeting, half of the teachers were missing, and it just seemed like they copy-pasted my old one with no consideration taking place. And what shocked me even more was that all of my teachers were surprised to find out that I had disabilities, meaning that none of them had looked at the email that they were sent out when I first arrived, saying that I needed specific accommodations because I needed help in these areas. So, something I also experienced in my new school is there are fights about once a week, often in the cafeteria, where students would cluster together so that to prevent other teachers. It created an unsafe environment for me, where my old school had had little to no fights ever, and I currently felt unsafe going to school. I was very academic based, and I felt like I was not challenged enough. So eventually I fell into a depression, which caused me to be committed to the psychiatric ward of Johns Hopkins Hospital for suicidal ideations in May. Luckily, I don't think that anymore, but I was very surprised to find out that my English teacher had marked me a 0 for every assignment I missed while I was in the hospital, trying to not kill myself. I had already turned in my final, which she promptly threw out, did not apologize for, and then on my report card, she wrote a comment that said, "Absences affect achievement." Because I was absent, apparently she felt that she had the right to give me a 0 for everything, no matter what I had turned in, or the fact that every other teacher had given me an excused absence. I did not return after my stay at John Hopkins because I felt unsafe and I had constant panic attacks at school, or even the thought of going back. I was scared that I wouldn't be safe mentally or physically at my new school. And I just really hope that this can be taken into consideration, where the special needs kids will get our rights in schools. Right now there's a lot of talk about hopefully the physical safety of students while they're walking to school. I also hope that their mental safety will be taken into account. Thank you very much.
You really did beautifully. Thank you for presenting what you have. I'm sure it was not easy. Would you do me a favor and meet with Dr. Kubik, our Associate Superintendent, because you've got some very specific concerns that I'd like her to talk with you about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, My Hall, Dave Dollins, Jennifer Sowers, Lisa Taylor Soriero, and Dana Schalheim.
Hi, guys. Hi, I'm Mai Hall. I'm the mother of that person outside.
You should be very proud.
Oh,
She was very brave and did a wonderful job.
That's a lot of speech and debate and Model UN and all the other little clubs she's involved in. It took a lot of therapy to get her here. So just to piggyback off of what she said, my main concern is about 504s and children's mental health. And as you know, May is coming up. It's Children's Mental Health Month. As a former educator of 13 years, I am very appalled at what Anne Arundel County offers our children with mental health needs and 504s, IEPs, early intervention services, you name it. I also have a son who had early intervention in Hawaii and who has been denied twice by a child fine, but that's not a here thing. That's another meeting I have to go to. So on with mental health, she talked about wanting to kill herself last year. We were not offered the in-home hospital, which I had found out from Mr. Bebo when I met with him last summer, when my husband had to take off work from serving his country in the U.S. Air Force. That's why we're here, not by choice. So when my husband had to take off work for maybe 4 to 6 times every month to help me out at these meetings, to help fight for my daughter's rights, her rights in school, just to have a free and appropriate education. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair for the special needs counselor at said middle school to tell me, oh, I think she was just copying another hit TV show that all the young teens are watching. I don't think it's fair for the 3 adults in that room to make assumptions about my daughter that were not true. It's not fair to not be taken seriously when I asked for help before May 25th hit, before she decided to hold a bleach bottle in front of the kitchen sink. I don't think it's fair that I asked a counselor for help and asked for these services when we first moved here from Hawaii and were denied them many times at MacArthur Middle School. And I'm sorry, but that's what happened. And then Mr. Bebo and our school liaison officer had the good idea to make an out-of-area transfer for medical issues to Severna Park. We did that. She had a great time at Severna Park instead of going to Meade. Based on the park scores and the school and climate surveys, Severna Park would have served her well. She did great there. She thrived in a learning environment with other people at the same academic level. However, she got kicked out of school on January 25th because they would not accept her out-of-area transfer. Because apparently, I had asked for a 504 and an independent education evaluation, which is another thing which you probably heard my friend Sarah Davis talk about last month. So we're in the same boat. I would like things to change. You have my contact information. Thank you. I'm going to go outside.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Board, for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name is Dave Dollins. I'm a minority. just like the previous speaker, we're minorities. We're parents of children with special needs. And the same like she was saying, we're discriminated against within Anne Arundel County. The rules are made up, language is made up, regulations are reinterpreted to deny our kids the fate that they deserve. Grades are manipulated. I'm sure I can't tell you anything that you haven't already heard. When you look at the numbers for Anne Arundel County, the school population for Anne Arundel County, the growth has been 9% over the last 10 years. I believe that's correct. Special education average student population is 13% across the country. Anne Arundel County had 13%, I think about 13 or 14 years ago, and for the last 10 years it's been 9.5%, 3.5% under the national average. When we go into an IEP meeting, it's almost combat, where it's so adversarial. It depends. So we heard from the young lady before where she's not getting her grades passed. When you're trying to get an IEP for your child, you get all the help you need. The grades are manipulated. The staff tells you how well your student's doing. They put you on a wait to fail process, which means as long as your grades are good, there aren't any issues, right? And then the grades are manipulated. The grading policy isn't followed, and the grades are kept up whether it's they don't adhere to the late policy. The kid can turn his work in as late as he wants, still gets full credit. They get help on tests, and so your child never fails, and you never get the services. They change the language, what's interpreted, what school. When you ask the school what school is from 7 to 3. Anything that happens outside of 3 is not school. Even though your child comes to school or comes home, melts down because she can't understand the concepts and the assignments that she was given as homework. So she's melting down for the work that she's given from school. It's not because she can't stay the night at someone's house. It's because of school. But from school's perspective, that's not school. So there's no academic impact, and it's an impossible failure. And again, I know you've heard all this before. I think it's time to get a coalition of parents together. I think, Ms. Hummer, I've started a survey. I'm circulating it through Anne Arundel County. You've tried to access it. I can give you the results of it. You're welcome to see it. So far, it doesn't look good. Anybody that's involved with any kind of special education, it's pretty bad for the county. So I would love to share that with you. I'd like to get a few more responses, and maybe we can work together and get the right amount of focus on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dahlin.
Hi, good evening. Members of the board, my name is Lisa Taylor Serrero. I'm back again, even though I was told essentially it's pretty much worthless and pointless. But as you already know, I'm really deeply disappointed and frankly disgusted about the lease with Milestone that puts our children and my child's health and safety in jeopardy, putting cell phone towers on our schools. And it also prevents a future use of the site by the school for our children's actual education. I wanted to share this with you tonight. After discovering the original permit modifications were denied, several hopeful parents got together to write up a proposal for an outdoor wetlands learning center, or an OWL center for short, that would consist of raised walkways throughout the wetlands site and a structural outdoor classroom for students, among a bunch of other things. It was a big, a lot of stuff that we came up with. When asked to place a proposal on the PTO agenda, we were told by the PTO to refer to the school or the board to learn the status of the property and proposed projects for the school grounds. Well, I guess it's not going to happen if Milestone builds this tower. Milestone appears to be going ahead despite the permit modification denial. As we learned of another community meeting with Milestone, I guess part of their permitting requirements, I had to find this out about the community meeting through an anti-cell tower Facebook page, not the school or the board. When I emailed the principal to see if he was notifying the parents of the community meeting, he said that he didn't know anything about it and that neither the board or Milestone notified him of any such meeting. I notified the PTO, who finally put it on their Facebook page, probably after speaking with Mr. Casey, the principal. But not all parents are PTO members, and not all PTO members are on Facebook or check their site regularly. And basically, it's not the PTO's responsibility to be notifying us. I mean, it's nice that they do, but they don't have to. This is yet another example of the flawed process surrounding these towers. I'm most curious to find out why the lot consolidation was made without putting it before the board, and it makes me wonder if this was the first time such actions occurred, and who exactly was involved. As from what I've been told, the board is bound by Maryland's open meeting laws, and voting on school properties would be required under those laws. I don't understand how or why it's acceptable, and our community deserves answers. Just real quick on a secondary matter, we were recently informed at the school about an asbestos removal project that was necessary for construction, and we were only given 5 days notice of that, leaving parents kind of scrambling to do the research. That said, I did the research and found out that I was comfortable with the protocols and everything in the school, but 5 days notice felt like it was insufficient time for parents. And so I'd ask that you consider changing this to 2 weeks, so that parents can be involved in matters that could affect the health and safety of their children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The point, I just want to address one of the points you made about the lot consolidation. This is the second time it's come up before the board, so I just want the board to make sure that they understand that the lot consolidation piece went through the board's attorney. It's not something subject to Open Meetings Act because it was no property was being conveyed or passed on to any other entity. It was a lot consolidation that we are working through the county government. So in the example of Shadyside, the whole lot that we own is actually divided up into 5 pieces, each with its own tax ID. And although we own the whole piece of property. So we are going through the process now of consolidating some of those lots under the direction of the county government so that they can consolidate some of the tax IDs and ownership pieces. So it wasn't something that needed to come before the board. It's an administrative piece, but it was discussed through the board's attorney, and I want to make sure the board understood that.
Thank you. Ms. Sowers.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto, members of the board. I'm Jennifer Sowers with the Anne Arundel County Parent Coalition. First, I wanted to say thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think it's fantastic for you guys to recognize the efforts that the community put out to bring us all together. We are here tonight to request more collaboration from the board regarding the legislation that was introduced at the county council meeting earlier this week. It requests support from the Department of Health in addressing effects of bullying on mental health in our schools and in the community, which I think speaks to a lot of the testimony that we've heard this evening as well. We are requesting representation from the Board of Ed at the next county council meeting where they will be voting on the legislation, and we would very much like you all to express your perspective on the matter and how we could better incorporate the Board of Education and tie in the Department of Health in addressing some of these matters. The Anne Arundel County Parent Coalition has diligently been working on positive initiatives for our school and the community. We appreciate your support and recognize that you are actively working to address many of our concerns. We hope that in the near future we can collaborate to make Anne Arundel County Public Schools the best it can be. I believe we are really on the cusp of accomplishing some meaningful changes, and I am really hopeful and excited to work together to do that. We would very much like to sit down with you guys and put our heads together. We have some really, I think, some great ideas, and that together with maybe you guys, the state's attorney's office, Jen Corbin, that we could all sit down and really make some great changes. Thank you.
we appreciate that, and we do want to work with everyone, and y'all have been doing great things, and I know that we'll all be working together more.
Hi, good evening. How are you all? I'm Dana Schalheim. You all know me. Now that the bill has been signed into law, we were at the signing ceremony together, and that's House Bill 679 and Senate Bill 729 that adds 5 school days to the school calendar beyond June 15th, that one. I just want to reiterate once again why I started that fight to begin with, conversation, dialogue, and that is I want Rosh Hashanah back as a non-instructional day. I've talked with most of you offline about that. I've sent emails to all of you. I'm grateful for the response. I really appreciate that. And I want to know when this is going to be on the calendar, up for a vote on the agenda. When will it be coming up? I've talked to some members of the CAC, and they don't. I don't know that they've been given that instruction yet. And so this affects next school year, and this is when I want the change to start, and I want it to be ongoing. And I want my day back like we had for more than a decade. So here I am again. I'll be back next time too. Yes, please.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
I was asking her. So I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know when we'll have a decision or recommendations for the board. So the board does not put it on. It's not become an agenda item yet. Okay. There is some. There are a variety of interpretations of the legislation, and so your interpretation might not be mine or that of the state's attorney's office or others. So wait, I'm not going to get in a debate with you. I just want you to know when you ask the question, I want to let you know that as soon as we get an interpretation, right now MABE is going through interpretation, as is it's been given to Liz Kameen, the assistant state's attorney that serves MSDE in the State Board of Education. She is going through interpretation. We'll be making a recommendation to the state board at their next meeting or the meeting after. I don't have any control over that. It will then be disseminated. A interpretation of the new legislation will be disseminated to the locals. We will then put our calendar committee together and make recommendations to the board. So I just want to make sure you know that things are in the works, but no decisions have been made. We're waiting on an interpretation because there are multiple interpretations among the 24 jurisdictions and legal aspects around the state.
Okay, the language was really clear in the bill that I read and that was signed.
What may be clear to us has not come out to be clear, so we'll be waiting on that, and we'll keep you posted.
Great, thank you.
We will now move on to consent items, award of contracts. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any other public comment? Okay.
One second here. All right. My name is Kevin Vasquez. I'm a senior at Chesapeake High School. I'm leader of the Axiom Club, backed by the Parent-to-Parent Organization and the Anne Arundel County Parent Coalition. Oftentimes these meetings seem to have the theme of that someone's voice is not being listened to and someone's not being heard. Or the ones I've been asked by board employees, how do we show them, being the public, that we're doing something? I was asked this question by the Associate Superintendent pertaining particularly to school safety, which seems to be the common theme of tonight. But before we answer that question, how about we ask this one? How does the board show it's listening to its parents, its teachers, and its students? The simple fact is government needs to listen to its people to be successful. So today I've come to you not with a problem, but with a solution. Allow the Axiom Club to survey all schools in Anne Arundel County through our website for solutions regarding school safety. Let us survey teachers, parents, and students at high schools. Let us survey teachers, parents, and 8th graders at middle schools. And let us survey parents and teachers at elementary schools. And lastly, let us take reports from SROs. Let us make sure that we're listening to the boots on the ground to do what is best to protect our schools so that we may allocate appropriately the incoming additional funds for school safety. Let's listen to our county public schools. In conclusion, I've offered this board a very good solution, and in its wisdom, it should take me up on this offer.
Thank you very much. We will take that under consideration. So, any other public comment? Okay. We will move on to consent items. Do I have a motion to bundle items 4.01 to 4.04. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, do I have a motion to move these items from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board approve the contracts as listed on tonight's agenda, 4.01 through 4.04.
Okay. All right, are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay, all those in favor of approving these? Motion passes. Item 5.01 is an action item, administrative personnel appointments. Do I have any board questions or comments? All those in favor?
You want my recommendation?
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
Okay. Do I have any board questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? All right, motion passes. Item 5.02 is personnel. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
Are there any board questions or comments? All those in favor? Okay, motion passes. All right, item 5.03 is superintendent's recommendation on redistricting for Maryland City Elementary and MacArthur Middle School and Meade Middle School. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. Bear with me as I read the recommendation once again into the record. I recommend that I concurred with the committee's recommendations to take effect school year 2018-2019 as shown on the attached exhibit. The Maryland City Elementary School boundary area should be redistricted from MacArthur Middle School to Meade Middle School. Rising 7th graders attending MacArthur Middle School living within the Maryland City Elementary School boundary are given the option to be grandfathered for the school year 2018-2019. Current 6th grade MYP and IB students from Maryland City Elementary boundary area should be given preference to continue the MYP IB program within MacArthur Middle School.
Okay, are there any board questions or comments about this recommendation? Is there any public comment? Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam President. With regards to item number 5.03, Maryland City MacArthur Meade redistricting, for the public hearing, how many folks from the public came out to comment on this redistricting measure?
None.
How was the notice conveyed to the public that there would be a hearing?
For the record, Chief Operating Officer Alex Shaknovich, it was disseminated in a variety of manners. It was sent out through ConnectEd, it was sent out through email, sent out through backpack flyers, it was posted on the school's social media pages, it was put out on our school district's website. There was coverage in the press. For example, the Capitol, the reporter just left here, had a story on it. So it's a multi-channel approach. There were also phone calls placed through the ConnectEd system. So the ConnectEd system does both phone calls, a web blast, and a text blast. So again, it's a multimedia, multi-channel distribution system.
And how long has this notification practice been in place?
It's been expanding over time. So with the advent of ConnectEd, it's expanded greater. So we've been with ConnectEd probably 6 years or so. Before that, so as our ability to expand the web of communication continues to grow, we take advantage of all of those. Back in the old days, we just took out an ad in a newspaper and created some flyers and handed them to kids. So, but nowadays, technology allows us to reach a tremendous amount more individuals in a more timely and cost-effective manner.
And the reason I'm asking is because of the concern voiced during public comment from one of our speakers that they weren't notified regarding one of the redistricting measures in the past for the Annapolis area. But it certainly sounds like plenty of notice was provided for these hearings.
Are there any other board questions or comments? Any public comment? So all those in favor of the superintendent's recommendation on redistricting? Okay, motion passes. Item 5.04, Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. Please bear with me as I read the recommendation again into the record, that I concurred with the committee's recommendation to take effect in school year 2020-2021 with respect to redistricting kindergarten students from Ferndale Early Education Center to George Cromwell Elementary School and Hilltop Elementary School pre-K students to Ferndale. I recommend the redistricting students living on Sowers Lane and Vista Avenue from George Cromwell Elementary School to Hilltop Elementary School, effective school year 2020-2021, as shown in Exhibit 1. The rising fourth graders in school year 2020-2021 will be given the option to remain at George Cromwell for one school year.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President, and again, thank you for this. Two questions. One is specific to the hearing that we had at North County High School. There was a gentleman who came in. Forgive me, I can't remember his name. It was in my notes, which are somewhere in my office. But he had commented on two roads specifically with regard to the Hilltop Cromwell boundaries, if memory serves me correctly. I wanted to ask, if to anyone's recollection, if it was specifically Sowers Lane and Vista Avenue that he had referred to that night?
Again, for record, Alex Shekno, the Chief Operating Officer, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then the second point I want to make, which is certainly outside of the scope of tonight, but I do hope, and I made this comment when we had initially discussed, or at least received the initial presentation, that patch of blue that is above, or at least on the map for map purposes, above North Glen Elementary School. I hope at some point we can revisit that, because it just seems so inefficient to have buses picking up students and then going all the way over to Overlook Elementary. So again, outside of the scope of tonight, but hopefully one day we can revisit when we have the greater redistricting conversation. Thank you for this.
Are there any other board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All right, all in favor of this redistricting recommendation? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 5.05, Crofton Woods and Severn Elementary Classroom Additions. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action? Second. All those in favor? Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend board approval of the Crofton Woods and Severn Elementary Schools Classroom Addition Educational Specification.
Okay. So moved. Second. All right. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All right. All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 5.06, Linthicum and Millersville Elementary Schools. This is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the board approve the Linthicum and Millersville Elementary Schools Kindergarten Edition Educational Specification.
Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? I will just say once again, it's always exciting to see us expanding and building on. People keep having babies, and we keep adding on to kindergarten. So, all those in favor? It's late. It is. It's kindergarten editions. We're bringing in more 5-year-olds. So, all those in favor? Motion passes. All right. Item 5.07 is, thank you very much, everyone, is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend board approval of policy JECB, subject to final correction for style and format.
All right. Are there any questions about storage and use of naloxone or other overdose reversing medication policy JECB? Is there any public comment? All right. All those in favor? Motion passes. All right. Item 5.08 is an information to action item. Do I have a motion to move this from information to action?
Second.
All those in favor? Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend the board approve policy JEC, subject to final correction for style and format.
That as was the previous policy, this is a third reading for administering medicines to students, policy JEC. Are there any board questions or comments? Is there any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes. Thank
Karen,
you very much.
I just want to say thank you. I know you've had a particularly busy week working with us, but you have been and always have been an incredible partner. I know it's been particularly busy and difficult for you and your staff, but I want to thank you. You've done wonderful work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. So, all right. Item 6.01 is a review item, and we have a staff presentation on a transportation update.
President Hummer, Vice President Gilliland, members of the board, Dr. Arlotto. My name is Les Douglas, and I'm the Supervisor of Transportation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this update tonight. On April 5th of last year, I presented a timeline showing the anticipated progress of the implementation of the computerized routing system through September of 2018. Shortly after that date, the Transportation Office was also tasked with implementing transportation to accommodate a complete shift of all school start times and dismissal times, a complete redistricting of Annapolis elementary and middle schools, the addition of approximately 1,550 new students to the school system for the 2017-2018 school year, and the opening of a new contract school in Annapolis. The planning, implementation, and resolution of issues resulting from these changes consumed a tremendous amount of Transportation Office manpower and resources from approximately the beginning of June through the end of November of last year. The combination of these changes left fewer resources to devote to the computer routing implementation during that period. That said, barring any serious unforeseen developments, I do anticipate that we will still hit the target for routing all school buses with the new computer routing program by September of 2018. I will share that adjusted timeline as part of this presentation. As we begin to implement the various efficiencies identified with the aid of our new computer-assisted technology, it would be wise to discuss the sequence of implementing these efficiencies, the relationship of these efficiencies to safe and reliable transportation, how the resources reallocated by these efficiencies will be utilized, and the effect of these efficiencies on the lives of the students and parents we're here to serve. As the Transportation Office begins utilizing the GIS and computer routing technology, there's a logical sequence for implementing the identified efficiencies. Let's be clear. Implementing these efficiencies, no matter how beneficial in the long run, will by nature be disruptive in the short term. Following this sequence will in the end yield the maximum results with the minimum disruptions to schools, parents, and students. Not following this sequence will prolong and intensify disruptions to the community while diluting the potential efficiencies we have been charged with implementing by the board. The first step in this sequence is to audit existing walk measurements to a high degree of precision, then correct, if necessary, and clearly communicate walk areas to the schools and parents. It will be impossible to accurately identify those students eligible for bus service unless we accurately identify and communicate to schools and parents those students who are not eligible for bus transportation by board policy and regulation. After last year's presentation, Board Member Burge commented that parents may not understand that the anticipated efficiencies may likely result in many students having to walk a greater distance to the bus stop or to the school. Now, these walk zone audits, in most cases, will confirm existing measurements, but in some cases they will capture additional homes in the walk zone or move homes from the walk zone to the transported area. The Transportation Office is currently preparing walk area maps to be posted on school websites, as well as poster-sized maps to be housed in each school, along with a complete address list for school staff to reference at the schools. These audits are being completed and will be communicated to schools and parents as they are finished. We anticipate notifying any affected students and parents of changes in transport or walk zones for next year prior to the end of this school year. Concurrent with cleaning up and communicating the walk zones to parents and schools, will be auditing and, if necessary, changing bus lot and depot assignments to minimize the distance buses have to travel to and from the first student pickups and last student drop-offs. The next two logical steps in the sequence to be carried out concurrently will be to eliminate route overlap, bus stop duplications, and excessive stops, then to optimize for efficiency the bus stop sequences. The last step would be to optimize the combination of trips assigned to each bus. This step is referred to as route tiering or route optimization. We anticipate this taking place for the 2019-2020 school year. Let me emphasize this point again. Attempting this last step prior to cleaning up the preceding inefficiencies will yield minimum results with maximum disruptions. Excuse me. Within the school transportation field, providing safe, reliable, efficient, and economical transportation is the undisputed and ultimate goal. Viewing these four separate and independent goals will usually result in poor decision-making and unsatisfactory outcomes. Considering these components in isolation all too often result in a compromise of safety, reliability, or both. However, if the areas are recognized as four integrated components of one overreaching goal, a successful balance of the components can reasonably lead to a healthy and responsive transportation system. Let's take a minute to examine the relationship between the various components. It should be obvious that efficiency and economy overlap quite a bit. In most cases, these two components move together. The most efficient alternative is also the most economical alternative. An increase in efficiency, or how well we use our resources, will positively impact economy, or how much we can save by using those resources efficiently. Likewise, a decrease in efficiency will negatively impact economy. All other things being equal, an increase in efficiency hits two birds with one stone. But economic and efficiency decisions will also often affect the reliability of routes. As a hypothetical example, consider this. If there's an economic decision to decrease driver salaries, absenteeism and driver turnover will go up. This will result in routes and stops being serviced by substitute drivers or not serviced at all. Substitute drivers are not as reliable at hitting the target times for bus stops, leaving students standing at stops longer. This economic decision could certainly have a negative impact on day-to-day reliability. Which brings us to the consideration of safety. Safety should be the overriding consideration in all transportation decisions, from driver training to vehicle purchase to bus routing. For the sake of this presentation, I'd like to focus mainly on the relationship between the safety and efficiency of routing decisions. Many times, safety and efficiencies work in concert. The safest stop or bus route is also the most efficient. That, however, is not always the case. Sometimes the safest solution is not the most efficient, or the most efficient solution does not provide adequate safety. Which brings us to the second point to be emphasized. If the routing decision is between safety and efficiency, the choice should be governed first by safety, even if it results in a slight loss of efficiency. As important as efficiency is to the balance of safe, reliable, efficient, and economic transportation, any discussion of maximizing efficiency or achieving 100% efficiency as the main goal in school bus routing is a giant red flag that safety, reliability, and other important considerations are probably not being considered to the degree that they should be. Efficiency must be achieved within the greater context of safety, not the other way around. Let me be clear, the Transportation Office is not interested in solely optimizing efficiency. We are interested in optimizing the balance of safety, reliability, efficiency, and economy with an overriding weight on safety. So how will the resources gained by any possible efficiencies be used? Anne Arundel County Public Schools will likely continue to experience extraordinary student enrollment and program growth for the foreseeable future. The last 3 years alone have produced an increase of over 3,000 students, requiring additional transportation supports each year. And we are anticipating yet another 1,700 students in the year ahead. It is the professional opinion of the Transportation Office staff, with a total of over 200 years of routing experience in both manual and computer systems, that any resources allocated through these efficiencies would be needed to help accommodate this ongoing rapid enrollment and program growth. Which brings us back to Mrs. Burge's comment from last spring. Parents truly may not understand that the anticipated efficiencies will in many cases result in students walking further to a bus stop or being assigned to a walk area. The reality in most cases is that implementation of efficiencies will, no matter how healthy and necessary to the system, create short-term disruption to individual parent and student schedules and routes. As we, the Transportation Office, learned last fall, we must be mindful to take time to ensure that any efficiency fits properly into this balance of safety, reliability, efficiency, and economy. We must also allow reasonable time for communities to adjust to these changes. Moving at a careful, deliberate speed would best accommodate these needs. Now let me share the revised implementation timeline. In preparing to launch the new routing system, we must keep in mind that at its core, it's the system used to effectively communicate to contractors and drivers the start-of-year routes and 2,500 route changes made each year. Creating and disseminating these route sheets and other routing reports to contractors and drivers will be a crucial step in implementing a smooth launch. We're currently in the process of finalizing this process. An important step in designing a clear and understandable format for this driver route information is to gather contractor and driver feedback. Although this will be an ongoing process, the initial gathering of this feedback will be completed within a matter of weeks. With the redistricting of the Annapolis elementary schools last year, several walk areas were affected. This necessitated beginning the walk area maps earlier than originally anticipated. As stated earlier, we anticipate notifying any affected students and parents of changes in transport or walk zones for next year prior to the end of this school year. In addition to communicating routing information to contractors and drivers, school staff must also have access to routing information. To facilitate a smooth launch, it's the goal of the Transportation Office to, as much as possible, make the change to the new system as invisible as possible to the clerical staff at each school. When they go to look up routing information in August and September, our goal is to duplicate the intranet path to routing information and have that information look as close as possible to the format they have been using to see in the past. If there are minor changes in the intranet path, or format look of this information, transportation staff will alert school staff to the changes before the end of the current year. Now, had the weather cooperated and I presented this information last month as originally scheduled, I would have talked about the what-if scenarios as if they were in the future. As of this month, we have begun testing how the computer program puts trips together and are gaining insight into what efficiencies that process may or may not yield. And with that, my formal presentation is finished. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this information. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Nally.
Right.
And I understand you're saying that you will notify parents before the end of the school year. I think I would like, as a board member, to know way ahead of time, as even sooner.
Sure.
Because we are going to need to be able to address those concerns of those parents, and also look at, when I look at your 4 points, the safety and all of those things that will be taken into effect.
Well, and if you notice, and it might have been more subtle than it should have been, but I did address the fact that last fall we need to look at that. One other thing I'd like to bring up, obviously I'm presenting to the board. It's being televised. I'm also presenting to the community. When I talked about the 4 areas, I want to make it clear, we're also setting down officially what we as a department need to look at. So not only am I presenting out to the board and to the community, I'm presenting into the department, so that we make it very, very clear that that's how we should focus our attentions as we go through these efficiencies. Now, do I also understand you to say that you would like for the transportation office to give you a list of the 4 or 5 areas that will be increasing the walk areas as soon as possible? Because we're preparing those letters over the next couple of weeks to actually go out to those areas.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to be surprised and have 5,000 people show up, and we're already talking about walking that area and looking into those areas of concern. So I guess before those letters go out, we would like, I'm just speaking as one board member, but I would really like to be able to look at some of the areas that are most problematic, that especially the one that
Sure.
was talked about earlier, and I'm sure there may be a few others.
Well, and I also want to apologize to the board because last fall, we feel confident that these walk areas should be included. The timing was, we have things to learn about the timing from last fall. So I apologize to the board.
Sure. Thank you.
Mrs. Nally and members of the board, I think what I'm going to recommend is that as the lists are put together, I'll sit down and review the lists on the Transportation Office, and Mr. Sheknovich and his team. After I've had a chance to review the lists, I'll review them with the board president, and then she can share it as appropriate.
Mr. Granon.
I just want to make sure I understand that. What do you mean share as appropriate? So I understood the answer to your question before to mean that, for example, with the people that we're speaking tonight, that there's going to be an opportunity for us to basically, if the ultimate recommendation, let's say from your team, is to take that bus service away, that we can say that we don't agree with that. That's what I understood that to mean.
With any transportation decision, like any other decision that is made by the school system, parents can appeal, and then it would come to us, and we would make that decision if it's appealed.
Okay. Well, I guess my follow-up question is how would that appeal take place? That's going to take place over the summer, and are they going to be entitled to a resolution before the school year starts?
Yes. Part of this timeline is that they will be notified as soon as possible before the end of the school year, so that there is sufficient time that if there are any appeals for any changes that come about, that the board would be able to address them before the next school year. So we can do that as expediently as possible.
Okay, then my last follow-up then is I guess I would ask that when the list comes out, that full information be provided to the public on whatever steps they need to do to appeal so that this can all be addressed.
And the letters that go out to the families will include, do include that information, don't they, about appealing if something has been removed? Am I correct in that?
They have not in the past. It has been a notification about transportation. It has not been a notification about transportation and then appeal. We can, if you want to make that, but I'm trying to answer the question. The question is, right now the letters go out and let the parents know that there has been a change to their transportation, adding them to transportation network or taking it away.
Ms. Sasso.
Before an appeal, if these letters come out and we start getting emailed, can't two members of the board basically make a recommendation? Or do we have to wait for an appeal?
It has to go through an appeal process. If
You mean two board members could not make the recommendation to bring it in front of the board for a vote?
I believe the board, and I'm not the expert. You'll have to get your counsel to counsel you on this, but you're going to need a vote of the board to override board policy. The transportation that is going to be provided and sent out will be following board policy, and so to override board policy, which is what I'm hearing the board talk about, making changes, that will have to go to a board vote.
So,
but I don't understand. What we're saying is the board has a policy that the transportation basically makes these recommendations, or the transportation makes the decisions?
Transportation makes the decisions that for any routes that would come that fall within board policy. So we have our transportation policies that outlines who rides and right, who rides, what's considered a safety hazard and things like that. If they will present things, Dr. Arlotto will present things that follow board policy. If we want to consider overriding board policy on any specific cases, that would be considered an appeal, and that would need to come before the board. Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Mr. Douglas, for this presentation tonight. I love the moving slides there. That works well for me.
Thank Mr. Gray for the visuals.
And I also got a note from Mrs. Bird. She said hi and thank you for answering her questions. Given some of the changes that may be occurring based on the data and some of the data outcomes and some of the efficiencies, and certainly, again, highlighting what you had noted with regard to safety being paramount, now seems to be an opportune time to review our transportation policies to ensure that they reflect best practices. If there's no board objection, I would like to request that Ms. Sasso, as chairman of the Policy Committee, and Dr. Arlotto's staff include a review of transportation policies for an upcoming Policy Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? We're adding more to the Policy Committee, moving forward.
I'm going to spend breakfast, lunch, and dinner here.
So you will be spending a lot of time. Mr. Grannon.
Yeah, just to follow up on that same point again, if the families have a right to appeal, I don't see why we would not advise them of that right in the notification of any transportation decisions. If it's a right that exists, we should be telling them about it. And our communications are, designed to give the public full information about their rights, not for, our convenience and that kind of thing. So if this is the appropriate form, I think that language should be in those notification letters, particularly in view of what we heard today.
And I'm not certain who can answer this who would answer this appropriately. I believe that walking further to a bus stop is not an override of board policy, so that would not necessarily be something to appeal, but removal of a bus stop or taking away bus service would be, because that falls under board policy. Am I correct on that, Mr. Bennett? Sorry, we're calling Mr. Bennett up.
Madam President, for the record, Tyson Bennett, Board Counsel. If the board takes action to establish something or to change something and takes a vote in an environment such as this, almost all of those are appealable. And the past practice would indicate that it is almost always important to include the community in any significant changes that are going to take place so that the community knows about potential changes before it comes to the board for a vote. In other words, to give people an opportunity to come and express their opinions to the board so that the board can gather all of that information when making its final decision.
Now, some of these transportation changes are not things that we would vote on. For instance, you know, a longer walk to a bus stop. That's not something we would vote on, but that would still would still be appealable for a parent.
It would barely depend on if that were a superintendent's decision, it could be appealed to the board. If it is done at a lower level, I'd have to look at exactly what was done by whom under what circumstances. Some of those kinds of things are appealable, some are not. So that's a no answer to your question. That's as close as I can get to an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Ms. Sasso. Sasso. Ms. Korbelak.
I just had a question. Are the letters going to be going out electronically through email, or are they going to be paper copies?
No, they're paper copies.
Okay. We were going to suggest you just link to the policy in the electronic letter.
But the policy can be included in the letter. Yeah. But the link to it. And, right. Mr. Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam President. So in a typical year, before we have started implementing the bus routing software, in a typical year, how many stops are typically no longer serviced?
You mean because of adding students to a walk area, or because we eliminate a stop?
Correct. So when we were doing it analog,
right?
So typically,
well, but let's not confuse that. Whether we do it analog or by the computer, the process is basically going to be the same. And I'm glad you brought that question up, because in the presentation it makes it sound like we're going to be withdrawing quite a few stops, and in fact, there's the potential for that to happen. Unfortunately, the public narrative has been to run a more efficient transportation system, and it has been alluded to that you need to pull all of these stops out. Changing stops it has to be done at the micro level, one stop at a time, because the safety of each stop has different components. One stop might be unsafe because there are too many kids at the stop and they're all running out in the street. Another stop might be unsafe because it's difficult to get to the stop. Literally, every stop has its own characteristic. So for us to use a computer program to look at a screen and say, let's pull all of these out, you're not seeing the important information. So we have concerns about going beyond the fact that it would gridlock our office, it would gridlock Mr. Shegnovich's office, it would gridlock your meetings if we did all of these at one time. It also wouldn't be the safest way to do it. We need to literally look at each stop and say, is it safe to pull that one back out? Now, that can be done fairly quickly, but they need to be looked at individually. We can't do this wholesale. It can't be a micro or a macro decision. It has to be done at the micro level, one stop at a time. Now, to answer your original question, how many do we normally do? Minimal amount. Minimal. But we also have quite a few inefficient bus routes because of the fact that we're going back into areas that really they can walk out to a bus stop. Now, if I can, and stop me if I go on too long here, but the other issue here is we spend between a quarter and a third of our man hours fighting not putting stops back in, and we all know how that goes. Somebody requests a stop to be put further back in the community, and if we don't do it, they say, okay, I'm going to call all of my friends, and we'll all call you. So then we have our phones tied up with 20 people. Then we still fight it and say, no, we're not going back further. Then it is appealed higher and higher, and at each one of those, fighting to not to add stops is takes up a tremendous amount of manpower. Now, if we're talking about pulling stops out, that's sobering thought. But so, and Frederick County did this about 10 years ago, and it did take. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I just want to tell you what happened. It took a tremendous resolve on the part of the board because it hit the board like a ton of bricks. And the board said, no, this is what we're going to do. We're pulling those stops out. But I just want to caution what we're talking about here. We've seen today about a one walk area, not pulling 100 bus stops.
And I'll add, Mr. Reiner, Mr. Bennett walked away, but I'm sure he would offer the same advice. Whatever processes you utilize to analyze these appeals are going to have to be consistent. It can't be because you're in one zip code or another zip code. It can't be your policy doesn't speak the farms. That's not something to take into consideration. It can't be because somebody screams and somebody doesn't. Whatever algorithm you decide, if you're not consistent, you're going to be accused of being arbitrary or capricious or irrational in your decision-making process. So as you prepare for this onslaught of appeals, you better be prepared for a very standard rubric that the board's going to use to analyze these in a very, very consistent manner, because you could be challenged further than that.
And that certainly is one of the challenges that we faced with the two parent groups that have come and spoken at our meetings so far. With trickling out the changes, it's especially with the I hesitate to call them early adopters, but we were faced with being able to say, trust us, we're going to have many different groups of people from all walks of life that are going to be faced with similar challenges. And we will add stops as part of this program, and we will also remove stops as part of this program. But for this initial wave, as it's trickling out one by one, it is hard to look at the parents and say, everyone is going to feel the pinch.
Right.
Now
it's going to be one big wave, really. So.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so with my final question, in a typical year, do we find that more students in Anne Arundel County are receiving transportation services? Year over year, are more and more kids riding our buses?
No, I mean, the percentage is about the same. So the percentage of the total is about the same. So as our population grows, we're transporting more youngsters each and every day, but the percentage of those transported is not. I know the one thing that we are continuing to work with the county government, is particularly the planning and zoning department and our new transportation department, is as communities are built, to ensure that those communities have robust sidewalk systems, they have robust hiker-biker trails, and proper connectors to link communities, so that we don't have these missing gap scenarios, or we don't have scenarios that we are forced to put a bus in because sidewalks are missing or inappropriate traffic signalization, et cetera. So the county has a new transportation director, and we've spent a significant amount of time with him and his staff, bringing him up to speed on the needs of walkers. As part of the general development plan that the county's putting together, the county has funded a intermodal transportation study, and the walkability of schools is part of the scope of work that the county government is undertaking. So they're going to be looking to strategically begin to identify within those 1 mile elementary school zones and within the 1.5 mile secondary school zones what infrastructure, and by infrastructure again I'm talking about sidewalks, bike lanes, ADA depressed curbs, crossing signals, etc. What infrastructure has to be put in place countywide to increase over time through capital expenditures, the walkability, both safe and efficient and effective walkability to schools. That is one of the stated goals that's going to be placed in the GDP when it's published here at the end of 2019.
Thank you. And as a student in Connecticut who walked 2 miles uphill both ways in the snow to my bus stop, I appreciate that.
Ms. Nally.
I would like very much to be notified when we're going to take the walk. I want to walk that route. I drive that route several times a week, picking up my preschool grandchild at Celebrate on Forest Drive. And I am telling you, it is a fearful place to drive. I'm there. There was a big accident right where I turned left to go in there. So I want to drive it, walk that as if I was having my own children, as the gentleman said earlier, walk that. I know, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Sheknovich, about making sure our rubric is the same. And I think that in any rubric, as we look at policy or whatever, that we will look at, carefully look at, and I know Mrs. Hummer said there are other areas in the county, there are busy roads and that, but the combination of effects in that area, when you talk about 150 students, and I want to, as I'm walking it, think about 150 students walking together, and the community problems in terms of certain groups not getting along, the safety issues. I think all of that, I think from your slides, we need to look at all of those circumstances. A lot comes to play, and maybe it does in other areas too, but in that particular area, a lot comes to play in addition to just that straight walk. It's not walking up and it's walking down. I've seen terrible, terrible accidents. I know how they speed. I'm just trying to picture 150 kids walking along. I want to see it, I want to walk it, and I would have I would really think that that's a rubric we could look at if there are other hot spots.
The good news is you get your 10,000 steps in this summer and more.
That's right.
May I clarify?
My Fitbit.
Right.
May I clarify one point? There are, and this is neither here nor there from the larger debate, but in fact there are 60 students, not 150. So I just need to clarify that point. I know 150 has been used.
150 was just kind of amazing.
Right. No, it's 60 middle school students that are being added to the walk area. So just to clarify that one point. Yes.
Mr. Gilliland.
Thanks again, Madam President. Just to clarify, not to belabor the point because it's getting late, but going back in your earlier part of your presentation when you had sort of the timeline fleshed out.
Yes.
My question is really about the notifications. I know there will be some dialogue potentially, but my concern is if those notifications are going out over the summer months, when people are on vacation, they may get back after a 2-week trip, and then there's a letter that, I just want to make sure that communication is going out well in advance to avoid vacation season, as well as we start to operate on a one meeting a month schedule, and then that starts
Before
to.
school is out.
Yeah. Well, based on what happened last fall, the parameters were set so that in fact we will not add a walk area. If we determine there's a walk area during the year, we will wait until the end of the year to notify prior to school letting out.
Thank you.
In writing that we'll change the walk areas at the beginning of the following school year, and we're going to set that down as a protocol, so that last fall doesn't happen again.
And Ms. Nally, as things you brought up, as Mr. Gilliland put forward, that we would have the policy committee look at our transportation things and see if they include everything that we want to include when we look at routes, because Mr. Douglas and his team are tasked with following the policies that we have set. So if the policy committee needs to look and see if there are things in that we want to change. So that will be on the agenda moving forward to take a look at that as part of this whole program that we're doing, is to make sure and look at it in all ways. Dr. Arlott.
Which we will certainly follow your lead on that and bring it forward to the policy committee. I do want to warn and caution the board that if policy is changed, then that will change the parameters that are built into the software system. And if you change the parameters software system, that will change the timeline. So if you change walk routes, you change walk distances, for example, or any of the other components, that will change the parameters and then therefore change the runs. So that could change the timelines in when the team will then be able to get the routes completed, go back and recheck now new bus stops that weren't being utilized the first time in the first run. So understand that there will be some domino impact to the negative side of when this will be up and running if policy is changed.
And Dr. Lotta, just to elaborate one step further, for example, if you change the walk distance from 1.5 miles to 1.25 miles, that's, 7,000 more students, so we're going to be transporting, so we're going to have to buy the buses, find the drivers, et cetera, to do that. So for every incremental change to the policy, we're going to aggregate more students potentially to have eligibility. Conversely, if you change it from 1.5 miles to 2 miles, then we can eliminate more bus stops and save on further transportation costs. So it works in both directions depending on what the parameters are.
Mr. Grannon.
Okay, I just want to be abundantly clear for me and for everyone that's watching. The policy, as I understand it, is the result is a presumption. That presumption can be rebutted for any number of reasons, including safety and all kinds of other concerns. And you all have actually not made a decision yet about the stop that we heard so much about tonight, right? You may very well take into account all of those things and say, even though it's just 1.3 miles, we're taking into account, and I think I understood your comments before, but land is unique. A stretch of 1 mile here is not equal to a stretch of 1 mile someplace else. And if a stretch here has traffic and a stretch here has traffic, that's something to consider. But if a stretch here has traffic and gang activity and a history of accidents and a methadone clinic, that starts to tip the scales. So we may not have to vote on this because you all make the, sounds like to me is what the right decision is, to not to take that bus stop away, but you haven't gotten there yet. That's all I'm saying, right? It has not been, that decision has not been made yet. Okay.
Correct. Ms. Nally.
Oh, well, I was just going to say exactly what Mr. Shaknovich, some years ago, I forget which years, it's been so long, but we did look at the cost of just the, maybe it was 2008, I can't remember, but we looked at the cost, Mr. Bennett may remember, of the just changing 1/4 mile, and it was absolutely unbelievable. And so that would be a huge consideration, because not only would it change the timeline, it would also impact our budget tremendously. So that is a huge consideration to take out, and we can't just arbitrarily do that. But I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Grannon that looking at all of those issues wouldn't even require changing policy. I mean, if just taking into consideration exactly what you said in the slide.
Yes. And also, just to stress again to the public, just because we're referring it for policy committee to look at does not mean that there will be any changes to policy. But it's always, it behooves us periodically to relook at our policies and make sure we're doing the things that best fit what's going on. So this is not saying in any way that policy would be changed, but it is something to look at. And again, no decisions have been made yet. No letters have come out. So we're talking hypotheticals at this point, but preparing for them. And I appreciate all the work you're doing, and that everyone will be notified before the end of school, so that we do have enough time to deal with all these things coming out there. Are there any other board questions or comments at this time? So we do have one public comment, Lisa Van Buskirk.
And Mr. Douglas, thank you. You and your team have done extraordinary work over the past year. It's been a lot of work. We've put a lot of additional asks of you and your team, and you've done a fabulous job. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Good evening, Dr. Alato, President Hummer, and members of the board. Very late evening. Lisa Van Buskirk with Start School Later. Start School Later has advocated for safe and healthy school hours, and safe and healthy routes to school is part of that issue, as you heard earlier tonight. The software was recommended by state audits in 2007 and 2014, and the repeated audit recommendation was to, quote, develop formal targets and goals to address desired bus capacity and student ride times in order to assist in developing more efficient bus routes and improve efficiency of bus utilization, by obtaining and implementing automated routing software. Is part of step 4 that Mr. Douglas alluded to in his presentation, part of developing these formal targets for bus ride times, efficient routing, and whatnot. SSL advocates and your task force gave these recommendations of purchasing software, wings, and a voice. And 3.5 years later, let's use the software not just for system efficiency, but for a safe and healthy transportation system, which Mr. Douglas said was the #1 priority of AACPS's bus system. Walking in the dark is not safe, and that it conflicts with that emphasis on safety for your transportation system. And just as most of us, even digital natives, can learn to do more with software like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint with outside training, so too can the Transportation Department learn more about their software, not just from the vendor, but from experts who see school system after school system struggle with altering bus schedules and successfully manage that change. In reference to the presentation, if route optimization is not until year 2019-2020 school year, is that when you will finally be able to update your 2014 task force cost estimates, especially for Meade Heights and Hemmer-Harmon? When will the board be able to address those late releasing after 4 o'clock schools in this timeline of delays? And then to give you a perspective from the state, I wanted to make sure you're aware that Frederick County recently had their Citizens Advisory Committee make recommendations regarding school hours, and the Frederick Board asked their Transportation Department to come back with them with a plan that would allow all schools to start between 7:30 and 9:15. 9:15 being the high school start time, 8:30 for middle school, and 7:30 for elementary. So they are awaiting the results of their Transportation Department's cost estimates on that, and I'm curious to see what those will be. So you're not alone in this process, but we need to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay. We move on to item 6.01 is a review item. I'm sorry. That's what we just did. Item 6.02 is a review item, construction status report. So, are there any questions or comments regarding the construction update report, status report? Ms. Nally.
Just checking on Arnold. How are they doing? They're coming along. I drove by, and it's looking great. But are we still on tap to, what is the move-in? The occupancy is August 2018? 19. It's not this year. Okay, correct. Good. I was getting a little worried when I drove by the other day. I thought, I don't think this is going to be working. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Is there any public comment? Okay. Thank you very much. It's all moving along very well. Lots of things happening. Item 6. Item 6.03 is a review item, the monthly financial status report. Are there any board questions or comments on the financial status report? So, are there any public comments? So that we don't have anything for you. Happy birthday, Mr. Stansky. I saw signs all over the building. They were plastered everywhere for Mr. Stansky. So, all right. So it brings us to the end of our meeting. The next general board meeting will be Wednesday, May 2nd at 10 a.m. The next policy meeting is Wednesday, May 9th at 1 p.m. The next budget committee meeting is Wednesday, May 16th at 5 p.m. Mr. Gilliland.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the board stand adjourned.
Second. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned.